Hey there. So I am doing a summary today on a question that I've been addressing over a series of videos. So this is in a playlist with a bunch of other videos that cover the details that I'm about to summarize. The question is, how can we set up a library, a phrase-based virtual instrument like Action Strings 2 in Dorico where we want to write notation? And it's a question I posed a couple of weeks back, and I've done a series talking about setting up custom instruments, playback and playing techniques, expression maps, playback templates, endpoint configurations, and how to pull that all together. And I've done videos on the individual topics, but here I'm going to put it all together in one hopefully concise demo. I apologize to those of you who want to get to the crux of this very quickly, that some of the videos have been long. I've tried to keep them brief, but I also really wanted to make them helpful, and I wanted to give people things examples they could follow. I am going to go back and write in notes so it'll be more navigable in the future. So let's get really started right away. Okay, I've got myself kind of a timeline here. First, going to start out, I've got my Dorico set up here. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set up a custom instrument. So naturally, if you're in Dorico and you come in here, you add single instrument, you're going to find there's a bunch of instruments in here. I'm going to go ahead and look up Action Strings. Action Strings 2 is there. I'm going to show you how I'd add that though. So I'm going to come out of here and I'm going to go up to Library, the Library menu. Let's pretend that you have a raw install of Dorico. You do not have an instrument called Action Strings 2. This is where you'd set them up. You click on Instruments. Come over here. Now, generally, all of these are going to be grouped into families, and this family value over here is something you cannot edit. So what I recommend is that when you create your instrument, create it from a copy of an instrument rather than starting from scratch that is in the family, right? So Action Strings is a string instrument. So what I would suggest, just to make sure that this family's value gets set correctly to strings, is you select the filter by family. Come down here. You could choose anything. But since I am adding Action Strings, I'll go with, I don't know, string bass. I don't know if there's an ensemble in here. Maybe there is. But it really doesn't matter as long as that family is strings, because I like to be able to find it at the outset of my projects in the strings family. That makes sense. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click this button here, which says New Instrument from Selection. It's basically going to create a copy of string bass that I can then edit. So I'm going to create that. You can see that it came up with names like string bass copy. I would change this at this point to Action Strings. And I'm going to call this one Action Strings 2 Demo, just to differentiate it from the one that's already in here called Action Strings 2, because the other one I had put in from the tutorial I did a week or two ago. The families, I can't edit that. That's why I started by copying one with the filter from family. I could go through and I could change these names. Let's say that I'm just going to say AC2 or AS2 for Action Strings 2. And I'm just going to put that in all of these for singular names and doubles so that it'll show up on my staff in a way that's easy for me to find. I'm going to leave the staves settings the same here. There's another advantage of starting with a copy of an instrument. You're going to have presets for the staves and clefs that probably make sense. You know, if you started with a copy of viola, for example, then you'll get the C clef, and that'll be what you want. So I'm not going to change anything else there. I just changed my staff labels, created a new instrument called Demo, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, when I come back here and I want to add an instrument, and I type in Action Strings, I'm going to see my original one, but I'm also going to see Action Strings Demo. I'm going to go ahead, click that, and hit Add. So now, if I go, I'm going, for some reason I have this empty-handed player. I don't want that. Just to keep my my score clean, I'm going to do that. I much prefer to work in Galley View. Galley View is up here in the View menu, just selecting Galley View. I prefer that personally. That's just a personal call. Go to Write, and I've got my Action Strings instrument, okay? So if I go ahead and play some notes, let me see we're not getting any sound out of it quite yet. Why is that? Well, that brings us to our play mode here. I've got AS2 set up. It is loaded up Halion Sonic, which is kind of a default. Anytime that there is an instrument that Dorico doesn't know what to do with, it's going to load up an instance of Halion. But it hasn't loaded an instrument, so it's completely silent. And furthermore, Action Strings 2 does not run inside Halion Sonic. So this is the point at which I need to start thinking about loading an instrument and an endpoint configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this VST and MIDI tab over here. I'm going to go ahead and click in here, click this drop down box, go to native instruments. I'm going to load up, let's do complete control. And complete control is going to load up. It's just taking a second here. I'm going to find action strings, which is right here. And, you know, I'll go with A Pirate Life. Doesn't really matter what the preset is. You can see that it's loading there. There you go. I've got it now. And now if I play, if it is selected, let's see here. Oh, well, my instrument is not yet connected, right? So I've got a VST loaded in my rack, but it is not the one associated with my AS2 instrument. So I go back to the track inspector. I'm going to now select complete control. Now, if I wanted that to say Action Strings 2 instead, I can come back here and I can open this up. Sorry, that's the wrong one. You open up the cog, and then I could call this AS2 demo. Okay. So now I come over here and I'm going to click back to the track inspector for my track, and I'm going to select AS2 demo. All right. So now we're all set. Now when I play my keyboard, I'm getting actual signal from the instrument. So we've created our own custom instrument that we can find in the Instrument Navigator. What we want to do now is we want to set up an endpoint configuration for this. So we're going to click on this endpoint setup. We do not have an expression map set up yet. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Save Endpoint Configuration called AS2 Demo. It's that easy. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and make sure that when these main variation 1, variation 2, and variation 3 are triggered with key switches, which we can see are C0, C#, 0, so on and so forth, that the right variations work. Now, to keep my lesson a little shorter here, I'm just going to focus on the first two here, so C0 and C#, 0. For that, we need what's called an expression map. So I'm going to go back up to the library menu. I'm going to go down to expression maps. And here, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to click brand new, this little plus sign, add expression map. I'm going to call this AS2 demo. And I'm going to leave the init and natural there. C0 was my default main. So I'm going to go ahead and add that for init. And I'm going to add that here for natural as well. But I'm also going to need a new playback technique or playing technique that I'm going to call, let's say, main and var1. So I'm going to back out of here, because when I want to create, if I wanted an articulation here or some way to name my key switch in my project, that's what I need to do. So I'm going to go up here to library again. I'm going to go to playing techniques, and I'm going to create a new playing technique. I'm going to call this AS2 main, and the text down here, it's going to inherit that. And playback technique, I don't have it yet. So of course I have to actually go to playback techniques first, up to library, down to playback techniques. You can see why I did all this in step-by-steps in the previous videos, because it's quite a long process. the good thing is you don't have to do this twice. So I'm going to create a new playback technique, and I'm going to call this AS2 main. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. Then I'm going to go back to my, actually, while we're there, let's just create one for the variation one as well. So playback techniques, I've got AS2 main. I am going to create a copy of that called AS2 V1 for variation one. Okay. Then I'm going to go into the library, into playing techniques. And I have my AS2 main here, but I'm going to assign it to this playback technique down here. I'm going to assign this to AS2 main. And then I'm going to leave everything else the same. And actually, I didn't want to close that exactly. I want to go playing techniques. I'm going to create another one called AS2 V1. V1. Go ahead and inherit the text here. And I'm going to come up here, select AS2 V1 right there. Now I'm going to hit OK. And now what happens is that when I'm in the write mode over here, and if I have my playing techniques open up here, I can see AS2 main and AS2 V1. So what I'm going to do is I am going to delete all of these measures just to keep things very concise. I'll zoom in a little bit. Whoops, that's a little bit too much. And I am going to go ahead and just play in a couple of chords. I'll put in a C major chord. It's on a bass clef. And then go to the next measure and put in a G major chord. All right, I'm going to go ahead out of notes. I'm going to take all that down 2 octaves like that. Now I'm going to play. What I'm going to do is I am going to take this chord here. Let me zoom out a little bit. It's a little big for my view. I want to make this first chord play on, oops, I did not mean to do that. Sorry, my mouse is a little fidgety. I want that to play the main loop. So I'm going to select that and then choose my playing technique AS2 main. Then on this one, I wanted to play AS2 V1. And I'm going to bring this window in just a little bit. Like that, so that I can bring up the instrument and have it open here for us so we can see that as we're playing back, oh, I'm sorry. We have to make sure back here that in our, so what's happening right now, the reason this is not using my key switches is because our expression map hasn't been set. We've created an expression map over here in expression maps, right? But we don't yet have the articulations in here. So we click this plus. We're going to go to AS2 main. All right. And AS2 main is going to be C0. That's what's written down here in my, that's the one that's configured in my instrument. And then I'm going to add another one, which is AS2 V1. Oops. AS2 V1, that's going to be C sharp 0. Like so. Now we've created our expression map, but we also need to make sure that it's actually implemented, that Dorico is looking at that. So if we go back to our track inspector, we're going to click on the endpoint configuration setup here. And here in expression map for this instrument, we have to double click and we're going to find our AS2 demo expression map. And now we're going to hit OK. And now when we go back here, what's going to happen is we're going to play this chord and we're going to see that the action strings starts on main 1 or main. Then here on the bar 3, it's going to change it changed to tremolo there. I think that is because of this chord here is playing such a low note that the low note is being construed by the software as a key switch. So what I'm going to do is just bring that up. What we see now is that first one here is loading the phrase for AS2 main. Bar 3, it is loading the phrase for AS2 var 1. Okay, so everything is working correctly at this point. We've gotten our expression map written. We've created our playing and playback techniques for the phrases. We created our custom instrument, and we've essentially got an endpoint configuration, but we want to put this into a playback technique so that, or sorry, playback template, so that next time we want to use this configuration, we can. So to do that, we're going to go back up to our actually play menu, and we're going to go down to, actually, before we do that, I'm sorry, don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm going to save this endpoint configuration again now that we've got the expression map in it, because that's a very important piece of information. We had saved it before, so now when I click OK, it's going to ask me if I want to overwrite. I'm going to hit OK. That endpoint configuration is crucial because when we come over here to the play menu down to playback template, and I'm going to create a new playback template. I'm going to call this one AS2 demo, playback template. And I'm going to add an entry here. I want to add a manual entry, which is my AS2 tempo or AS2 demo. These are endpoints. So when you click on this add manual, this is a list of all the endpoint configurations that have been saved. I saved one for AS2 demo, and that endpoint links up the instrument with the expression map. So we've got that in here now, and I can go ahead and click OK. Now we have a playback template. And if I hit apply and close, well, actually, let me make this a little clearer. I'm going to go ahead and select Halley & Sonic again for this instrument, just to show that loading a playback template will do exactly, we'll get this all configured for us. So I'm going to go ahead to playback templates, and I'm going to choose my AS2 demo playback template, hit apply and close, and it's going to get rid of Halley & Sonic and the old AS2 demo, and it's just going to reload the AS2 demo that I actually want. So here it goes. It's thinking. The Halley & Sonic will disappear, and we're left with AS2 demo, which is linked correctly in the instrument. It loads up. Once we see this play button turn green, we know that our instruments, all instruments, are loaded correctly. And then now we can play. And what we'll do is we'll get the main followed by AS2 V1. Now, one thing I've found with action strings too is that some funny business can happen when AS2 has to play on the very first note. So I think that's why the first chord isn't playing. And the video is almost already at 20 minutes, so I don't want to get bogged down too much in troubleshooting that. I'm hoping that the walkthrough has given you really good context for all the things that we've talked about. I am hoping that my video winds up displaying correctly because I'm getting a caching issue over there. But suffice it to say, these are the steps to using custom instruments, playing and playback techniques, expression maps, endpoint configurations, and playback templates in order to really get hold of your own Dorico workflow. And that's the whole point of the last several. So if this has been helpful to you, please do like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot more content like this. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments. I will read them. I will get back to you, and I will respond to any topic suggestions that people want me to cover in my videos. Thanks again so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. All right, bye for now.